I'm not very good technically. Hi, everybody. It's Caroline Leavitt. I'm the co-founder of A Mighty Blaze, the book initiative that began the day of lockdown when many authors had their tours canceled, including me, and bookstores had their doors shuttered, and readers who were used to interacting with their favorite authors couldn't do it anymore. We're now going on, I think it's year 5 or 6, excuse me for a minute. And, it's been just amazing. So thank you for everything. Before I introduce our guest, who is a writer I absolutely adore, I want to just alert all of you to the chat on your right. All that's there is if you have any questions or comments for our guest, pop them in the chat and I'll get to them. We at A Mighty Blaze really like you to buy your books at indie bookstores. And to make it really ridiculously easy for you, I've put up a link to bookshop.org so you can just pop on that. So, first of all, look, we have Helen Schulman in the house. Look at this cover, Fools for Love. Isn't this like the best cover you've ever seen? We've just been talking about it. This pink is kind of acidic. You've got this zipper mouth and the font is perfect. It's just perfect. And you know what's even better? The inside is just as tremendous. So let me give you an introduction to Helen, and then I promise I will shut up and let her talk. Helen Schulman is the New York Times best-selling, critically acclaimed author of 7 novels, and all of them are just spectacular, including Lucky Dogs, Come Away With, and This Beautiful Life, which truthfully broke me in the best of all possible ways. I think it was the first of your books that I read, Helen, and then I just went and read everything that you've written. She's a Guggenheim Fellow. She also received a fellowship from the New York Foundation of the Arts, Sundance, Aspen Words, and Columbia University. She's a professor of writing and fiction chair at the New School. So let's hear some of the praise for this book. Helen Schulman is not afraid to make you squirm. That's a great line. Across her long and distinguished career as a novelist and short story writer, she has fearlessly explored the awkward collisions between our private and public selves, between what we present to the world and what we conceal from even our closest companions. Fools for Love, her latest collection of stories, finds her characters weighing the past against the present, looking for redemption in all the wrong places, and occasionally coming up roses. LA Times. Kirkus starred review. Without attempting to be a novel in stories, this collection is free to go off on wild tangents, such as a story narrated by a baby, Lucien H., one of my favorite stories, and a tale of forbidden love with a married Orthodox rabbi in Paris. In multiple stories, people come back from the dead and from everywhere, and there are sentences to make you laugh. Never underestimate the power of a good short story to lift your spirits. And wait, there's more from Booklist. Witty, polished, and deceptively casual. Gives John Cheever a run for his money. Smart and often witty, says self-awareness. She delivers with style. And finally, from Library Journal, a couple of ghosts add an edginess to these stories whose spiky, sex-driven characters are all definitely fools for love. So welcome, Helen Schulman. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just so thrilled to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Caroline. As I was just telling her before we started, Caroline's one of the nicest people I have met. And I'm so grateful for your time.
My mother and my sibling would disagree, but thank you for saying that. So as I said this to you before, this is the most joyfully subversive book that I've read. It's just delightful, and it's perfect for these non-joyful political times. I wanted to know, was that when you were gathering these stories together about love, its discontents and love's pleasures and sex and betrayal, was that part of your intent, or it just sort of happened that this became the perfect book for these times?
You know, the whole thing is an accident. I mean, basically, these stories were written over 3 decades. 2 of them became novels. One of the novels became a movie. That was P.S.
P.S.
I wrote them in between larger projects, such as novels, and also I wrote a lot of screenplays. And so when I didn't know what to write, I wrote a story. And I wasn't writing towards a collection. I was just writing ideas that I had at different points in my life. And then at a certain point, I realized that if I didn't collect them, they were going to be lost forever, because the magazines, some of them don't exist anymore, like Tin House, Wonderful Tin House. I had 2 stories in Tin House, and their archive isn't online. So I wanted them collected. It wasn't anybody's favorite idea that, publishing does not love short stories or short stories collection, but I had just sold my book, Lucky Dogs, and I made it a 2-book deal. And it just happened that way. When I kind of plunked the stories down in front of my editor, longtime editor, who the book is dedicated to, Jennifer Barth, she said, can we find a way to connect these? And I was like, I don't think so. I don't know. She said, well, just take a look. Let's update them a little. And so a year later, I had a new collection of stories, including the title story, which is brand spanking new and just came out in the Atlantic. And that's a story about a young couple falling in love. And the last story is about them at, I guess, after, 25, 30 years of marriage. But I'd written that last story long before I wrote the first story. And somehow doing what Jennifer said was just look at them. I began to see ways the stories could interact and how characters could dance in and out of some of the stories. There's 1 or 2 that are just, they're just solo acts, but the rest, the characters in the first story pretty much are introduced, and they do walk in and out of each other's lives and bedrooms and all of that. So that was really fun for me. And I began to see that they were all about love. I didn't even know that. And I thought I hope that they're funny. And so it was kind of joyful for me to rewrite and reconnect. The Revisionist was a short story that was published a zillion years ago, and it was in the Paris Review, and then it was anthologized, and then I turned it into a novel and it was published. So that piece that's in the book had been edited at least 3 times. But when I gave it to Jennifer, she's like, some of this doesn't make any sense. And I was like, and she was 100% right. And so I really reworked that story. And I usually don't go back and look at my work. Once it's done, it's done. I'm a San Mandela person. You make it, it's beautiful, you blow it away. But going back and making these stories better and trying to figure them out from a different perspective was actually a great experience.
Well, your joy comes through. I mean, your joy comes through. It's just, this is the most delightful, subversive book I've read in a long time. And I just want to mention again, there's a link to buy it right in the chat. So I wanted to ask you about the difference between writing a short story and a novel. Do you prefer one over the other? And when you're writing a short story, do you consider it a sort of like a palate cleanser before going into the length of a novel?
Well, as I said, 2 of the stories, The Revisionist and P.S., both became novels. And they could grow. But a lot of these stories couldn't. I mean, I really even tried with the last story called In a Better Place, the story about the couple now in middle age. I wrote a bunch of stories about them and they didn't work. I couldn't find a way. I thought, there's something more in mind here. It was a little bit more autobiographical. Usually I don't write autobiographically, but I couldn't make it work. So those stories are still somewhere in a desk drawer. So it seems like stories themselves they're about one small idea, and a novel really has to include multitudes, I think. And I try to, my novels often have multiple storylines and multiple narrators, and they're more capacious than these stories, which I hope are more like an arrow shooting.
Yeah, it's I always feel that, and maybe you'd agree with this, that a short story is like an affair and a novel is like you're in a marriage. It takes so long and it spins out and it changes. And
you have to wake up to it every morning too. So
Yes,
it's
that's
like
right.
a marriage. So yeah,
That's right.
there.
That's right. One of your characters says this line, and I loved it so much I actually wrote it down. And I wanted to know if this is like your philosophy of life or just your character. Here on Earth, it all pretty much sucks, even though a lot of things are so beautiful. I mean, it's sort of like you're looking at two different things in life that coexist. A recognition that things are hard, but also that isn't it remarkable and aren't we lucky that we get to live it? Am I misreading?
No, not at all. I
Oh,
mean,
good.
what's shocked me most about life is how really difficult it is, and how, as my friend Jill Bialowski says in a poem, none of us are spared, and some are really suffered tremendously more than others, absolutely. But it's incredible. I mean, this is not my home. This is my friend's country house. She lets me come and escape and
It's
be with her.
incredible.
And it's gorgeous. I mean, it's so beautiful outside. You know, you drink a good cup of coffee and you see God. I mean, you're with your children if you have them and you're lucky enough to spend time with them, and you know why you live. So I mean, there's so many things in life that give me great pleasure, but I'm pretty terrified most of the time, and I worry, and I do my best to fight the man if I can. And
Right.
I know you have to live with those two truths at the same time because they're both real.
They're both real. Exactly. Exactly. I wanted to ask you about the two stories that turned into novels, especially PS, which was made into a film. When you saw it as a film, did you feel this is no longer my work, or did you recognize it, or did it do things that you wouldn't have done or
Oh
would
yeah.
have?
I mean,
Oh,
it was a saga because I wrote the first draft of that screenplay, and when I wrote it, everybody was really excited about it. And you know, I don't know if you've written at all for Hollywood, but you know, they're like, let's get Julia, you know, Robert, whatever. It was like that. And then we got this director, and he and I just didn't see the material at all the same, and he rewrote me. And then he had these great actors. He got these wonderful actors, Laura Linney and Paul Rudd and Topher Grace. And it just went on and on, Gabriel Byrne. And I was like, what do I do? And I thought, well, go to the set, see what you can get out of it, because you may never be here again. And I've been hired to write 9 screenplays, and many of them got very close to getting made, but this is the only one that got made. But we just didn't agree. So I felt like it was, thought I wrote like a sexual revenge comedy, Black comedy. And he thought it was like, you know, a grief story, which that was the undercurrent, but not mine. So anyway, it was sobering. It was hard. You know, I'm Jewish. My characters were, well, one was the son of a rabbi. And when I saw, even though I love Topher and I love Laura, I was just like, all the Jewishness has been wrung out of this. So yeah, there were a lot of feelings, as the kids say.
oh yeah. And how do you find writing scripts as satisfying as writing novels? Because to me, it's such a difficult thing to do. To me, it feels like you're stripping away everything just to get to make things just much more spare.
Well, I actually love writing scripts.
You
And
do? Okay.
I think that they helped me tremendously as a fiction writer, because when I first started writing fiction, I only cared about language, and I had no sense of story. I wasn't even interested in it.
That's
And
interesting.
I couldn't find the story, but when you write a screenplay, you have to have a story.
You have to have the story. That's right.
And it's a story that is built on images. I mean, even though you have dialogue, you're really writing the template for images. So you have to be able to picture it. And that was different too. So that really helped me to write my novels, I believe. And also what's nice about screenplays is there are other people involved. So they take you out to lunch.
Right.
You're not home alone for 5 years, like having no idea if you're,
Right.
you know, in your pajamas, just getting older. You know, there's pressure on it. It gave me years of health insurance and stuff like that.
Right, right.
But it gets so frustrating. At least with a novel, I can write what I want to write, and hopefully people publish it. And with the screenplays, you just go and you go from, we'd have a director, then we'd have an actor, then we wouldn't have the actor, then we wouldn't have the director, and blah, blah, blah. And we write it, this and that and that. And it just never, it seemed like it never got finished.
Yeah.
So at some point I thought, you don't have that much time on earth. Like, what do you really want to write? And I really want to write books. I mean, I would never turn down writing screenplays again. But as I told you before, I have a sabbatical next semester, and I'm going to work on a book.
That's wonderful. So can you tell us something about your writing process? Do you map things out? Do you have different files, or do you have different scene cards, or do you just sort of follow your characters? Do you have any sort of methodology?
Well, the one thing I do that's completely neurotic and compulsive is that I start from the first page every day. So I write forward from the first page up to about page 60 or something when I can't do it anymore. And then I start on page 10. So I'm constantly revising and rewriting as I go. So by the time I actually have a draft, which I'll then rewrite and rewrite and rewrite, it's not a total mess.
Wow.
It just fall apart. So this has worked for me. What also has worked for me is my beloved agent, Sloan Harris, said to me many times, you need a deadline, because I can linger and feel lost. And so at a certain point, after working for maybe a year or so, I show my book to my husband, who was a magazine editor. And I say, lie to me. And he does. He says, oh, this is good. That's good. But really, it shouldn't be from the dog's point of view, maybe, honey. And so then I go back for another year or whatever. And then I say to him, give me all you've got. And then I work on it. And then I show it to Sloan. And he often says, okay, let's try to sell this. What's going to come next? And let me know in 4 days. And it's that kind of pressure that makes me figure out the pattern for the rest of the book. And so I often think of my books in terms of math, because I have a lot of different characters' point of views, like how often it's going to be one character and then another, and for how many pages and stuff like that. And so I make a form like a poet would use for a sonnet. And that really helps me, it girds me, it gives me lots of margins and pressure.
So while you're writing, you don't necessarily know what the end is until you sort of make your way towards it then. Is that correct?
I don't know the end until, it's somewhere hopefully around that 60, 70, 100 pages, I figure out what the ending's going to be. Because if I don't have it, I wander. And so my first novel, The Revisionist, which the story came from, is in this book, I didn't know. And it took me 7 years to figure it out. And it was like going into Vietnam, no plan for it. And I swore to myself after that I would never do it again. I just can't write, thinking, Flannery O'Connor said you write one sentence and then another sentence, and then there's a Bible salesman, and then there's a wooden leg. But I can't just do that. I need to know at a certain point where I'm going. Yeah,
because otherwise you're going to have an 800-page novel that's going off on all tangents. But that's interesting. That's interesting. I wanted to also talk about the fact that what I loved in this book was that, let me show the great cover again, was that New York City is a character. So since you have written a story from the viewpoint of a baby, would you ever write a story from the viewpoint of New York City? And what would that look like?
No, I would never write a story from the viewpoint of New York City, because the thing about New York City is it's 9 million viewpoints. And babies actually do have viewpoints. I love that story. Tell us about that story. The story is The Memoirs of Lucian H. And at that time, there were a lot of people writing memoirs who were quite young. And in my mind at the time, things have changed so much in the world. But at the time, I was just like, wow, I thought you really had to accomplish something or something horrible had to happen to you to write a memoir. But that did not prove to be true. So I thought, well, who's the youngest person I can write a memoir of? And I thought, a baby. I'd heard of a baby quite like Lucian. And so that's what gave me the idea.
It's hilarious. It's so surprising and brilliant. And the baby is so alive. And the thing is, for those of you out there who have had children and babies, they do have viewpoints. They come up with personalities, and you can see it in different ways. And the great thing about this story is that Lucian tells you what he's thinking and how things are coming. So I want to ask you another question. You've had such a breathtaking, brilliant career. When you look at the scope of things that you've done and that you've written, do you feel that what interests you in writing a book has changed as you've learned new things, or is it a new process all along? I mean, do you build from one book to another?
Well, I would hope I get better. I mean, that's my hope. With one novel to the next, that I learn more about it and I have a better sense of craft, and it's more complex. I hope that's true. I think that what happened to me at a certain point was that I started to write novels about earthquakes in the culture from the point of view of a person or a couple or a family. So I wrote about Holocaust revisionism. I wrote about 9/11. I wrote about Me Too. I've written a lot about the internet and its effect on our lives. I wrote about, so so there was kind of a political underpinning, though they're really intimate stories about people and just how the things in the world affect us all as people more than like a newspaper story, right? And so, but now that I'm starting a new book and and I have sabbatical, which is so unusual, I'm going to try something completely new and write a historical novel.
Wow.
I've been on panels before, historical novels panels, because people think that I often write about the way we live now and how it's changed with each book. I think that's interesting in that in some ways I wanted them to be time capsules of what really it felt like to be during these earthquakes.
Right.
But now I'm writing about an earthquake in the past.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, I have the fall off, and a lot of the spring is lighter, and I'm giving myself this year to see if I can do it.
I read that you're tech adverse. Are you still tech adverse?
Oh my God, I'm so bad. I mean, I can't do I can't take a screenshot. I can't turn on the TV in my house if somebody's been watching a movie or something else. When the kids were in college, I would take pictures of the different words, and they would, but I can't learn it. It's something really,
there's something
spatially wrong with me that I just can't learn it. I can learn a lot of things, but nothing tech related. So even though I write about tech all the time, I know absolutely nothing about it.
I wonder if that has to do with, I have a lot of writer friends who also cannot work the TV. I can't work our TV. To me, the TV is a total nightmare. I also cannot drive a car. I never was able to figure that out. Computer I'm okay about, but there's something about technology where I guess it uses a different side of your brain, maybe. But I don't know.
They say it's intuitive. I say it isn't, because
I don't think it is either. I can't figure it out either. I want to know, I know you teach, what's the worst advice you think writers are given that they should definitely just ignore?
Oh, wow, there's so much.
There's a lot, I know.
I think you should write what you're burning to write. I don't think you should listen to anybody else's rules. Some people say write what you know, and for some people that works. For other people, their head's full of dinosaurs and fairy princesses and things that they've made up themselves, and that they should do that. I think you have to listen to yourself. I mean, it's good to be open to criticism, because you can learn so much, and hopefully someone can help you with that in a way that's nurturing and also, evocative, and it helps you to move forward. But if they don't get you, move on.
When you look at your class of writers today, how do they seem different from when you were a young writer yourself?
Wow, they're really different. When I was a young writer, the whole world was white men. There was nothing else, really. There were a few women, and the guys they did all the reviewing, and the books were all reviewed were written by men. And, that went on for a very long time. And then it changed, it radically changed. And all of a sudden there was room for people of color and LGBTQ and all of that. And that was a good change. I think women kind of still got a little bit short shrift. I've always written I guess one of the threads throughout my work is how hard it is to be a girl. And I just saw the play. John Proctor is, what is it?
John Proctor is the villain.
Yeah. And I thought, nothing's changed, or it's changed a little. It's got different language, but it's the same problem that I've faced my whole life. And I wrote extensively about Me Too in Lucky Dogs and studied all of it. I just immersed myself in that. And I don't think anything good really has come from Me Too. Come to think of it.
What's really distressing about it is some of the movements that have come out of Me Too are worse than how things were before Me Too. There's the trad wife, the traditional wife. There's a whole group of women who want to go back to, we're not going to work. We're going to just have kids and stay home. And I keep thinking, why would you want that? Why would you want that? But there are a group of people who do, and it's very distressing. Oh, you have a comment. Let me pop this up to show you. Okay, Stephanie says, fabulous. So excited to read your historical novel. Thank you for not being shy, Stephanie. I have just two more questions. One of them, and both of these questions say more about me than they probably do about you. What's obsessing you now, and why?
Oh, I mean, I'm the biggest doom scroller alive.
Oh, you are, really?
I hate Donald Trump. I'm obsessed with what he's doing to our country and the world. And I'm aghast every moment. And yet I'm strangely getting used to it.
That's the danger. That's the danger.
It's just what's gonna shock people enough to wake up and see all the harm he's doing. I'm obsessed with Israel. I'm Jewish, and I'm obsessed with all the bad leadership in the world.
Yeah.
And it horrifies me, even though I have immense feeling of loyalty and kinship. But I can't bear it. So I just toggle through all this and try to work with my students through what they're going through. My students are worried that they're going to lose their visas, that they're going to be arrested.
It's terrible.
And so,
I don't know what it's going to take. I really don't know there was a Stephen King movie a long time ago about a Trump-like character. And what it took to down him was somebody went to shoot him and he held up a baby. But I don't think that would do that with Trump. It's too sort of evil and insidious.
Well, he doesn't really have empathy or compassion.
No, he doesn't. All right. So my last question, which will be a pleasant one. What's your guilty pleasure? Do you have a guilty pleasure?
I watch dumb TV to fall asleep.
Oh, I love that.
I read cookbooks. I love to read cookbooks. I love a great martini. I'll tell you that.
That's something that you need nowadays.
Yeah.
So I want to show the cover one more time. This book is so fabulous. I have to say, this is my writing office, and I keep the books that I love here. And this is going on the shelf in my writing office because it's just so stupendous, Helen. I want to thank you, Helen, for being here so much. I want to thank all the people who were here and Robin also posted and said hello. I want to thank Robin and Stephanie for being brave enough to post. I want to make sure that people know that I put up bookshop.org, and very important for everybody to know, next week let me make sure I have the right day, on the 24th, which is a Thursday at 4:00, I'm going to be interviewing E. Jean Carroll. Wow. So please come. She's hilarious. She's smart. She stood up against Trump, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun. So thank all of you. I hope I'll see you next week. And Helen, you just stay put so I can say thank you to you privately. Bye, everybody.